All right, greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracol here, or Arons van Sail, here to shine a light on the happenings on the other side of the Atlantic that are relevant to South Africa, here to the southern tip of Africa. Joining me to do that is a familiar face. I really doubt that there's anyone still in my audience that does not recognize my guest here tonight. Of course, it's Chris Wyatt, Colonel Chris Wyatt to most of you. And someone who I've had the pleasure of meeting in person many times, and someone who's regularly here in South Africa. So he's on the ground, knows what's going on, is one of the Americans probably with the most amount of knowledge in regards to what's happening in South Africa. Not that the Trump administration has any lack of knowledge on what's going on here, and we're going to be talking about that. But welcome back on the show, Chris. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you, Ernst. The Dark Continent, is it load shedding again? Did I miss something?
No, well, it was once again proven this week where, I mean, that's why I do that intro, is the fact that people today often make fun of people in the past believing all these wacky things about Africa and it being the Dark Continent, this information black hole. But I mean, I contend that it's still the matter today, even in the information age. People will believe anything about South Africa, African countries. The information gap is still incredibly massive, and I think people today in the information age are quite misguided for laughing at people maybe 200 or 100 years ago for believing all these myths about Africa in regards to it being this dark continent. People still fall for many myths today.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, of course, the phrase comes from French, l'Afrique noire, which is Black Africa, has nothing to do with people. You hit it spot on. It was an information gap. People knew nothing about what was below the Sahara. And that's why in Europe it was called the Dark Continent, because they just didn't know anything about it. And I agree with you 100%. People still don't know what's going on, including most Africans.
And well, let's see if we can be a little tiny light, a candle light in that darkness tonight. Chris, just your raw thoughts when it comes to particularly the happenings of the past week. I mean, we could be talking about the past few months. There's so much to unpack, but then the conversation would be going on for hours upon hours. So I'm going to be focusing in a bit more on just the past week, what's been happening, the meeting in the Oval Office, the fallout from it, and the massive debate, the fiery debate that's been raging both in your country and in mine regarding the events there. Just hit us with some of your initial thoughts, and then we can get into it.
Well, I covered the meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump at the Oval Office. 155,000 people tuned in for that stream, 14,600 live for like over an hour that time. I have to say that I was very disappointed because I'm out of popcorn now. I used all my popcorn watching that. But seriously, well, it was termed by U.S., European, and South African media as an ambush. I'm not really sure how you can term it an ambush when Cyril Ramaphosa asked for the meeting. His team prepped for the meeting. He had a South African reporter tee up a question, which he rudely interrupted his host and said, "I'll answer this question. No, I'll take this." And Trump's like, "Oh, okay, go ahead, Rocco." It wasn't an ambush. There was no ambush whatsoever. In fact, in my view, Donald Trump did South Africa and Ramaphosa in particular a very serious favor. He could have embarrassed him personally by putting up videos saying he can keep his America, we'll keep our South Africa, or running around screaming vaccine apartheid. Or he could have also put up videos of a member of parliament from the ANC recently just saying that, listen, if people don't like the BEE rules, they can go invest in India. You know, he could have put things like that up. He could have put up his comments at the State of the Nation address, "We will not be bullied." You know, Ramaphosa could have been embarrassed personally, but instead videos were presented in the White House that had nothing to do with the ANC. At least they could distance themselves from it, and so could the GNU. They could say that, well, that's Julius Malema. He's not in our party. He used to be, but he's not. That's Jacob Zuma when he was president. He's not in our party. He's with MK now. So Trump really could have hurt and embarrassed him massively. He could have let any of his cabinet members speak up. But did you notice the death stare from Pete Hegseth and from Elon Musk? Not a word coming from them. Trump handled this with aplomb. There was no ambush. This was suicide. Cyril Ramaphosa was handed a spade and he dug his own grave. And this did not go well. All the nonsense is coming out of South Africa's government now about this was a good meeting, the door is open. That's all propaganda. And same thing with the Elon Musk opening up for Starlink. This was all planned ahead of time. No matter what happened in Washington, we're going to come back and say these things. But it's utter rubbish. And if they keep it up, Trump is going to spank them.
Right. And what also comes to mind is the fact that now the new buzzword is ambush. The South African delegation were ambushed. Now, you as a military man, Chris, you would know an ambush is, in the classical understanding of the word, is something that nobody can predict, right?
Yes. In fact, you're caught completely off guard and you are attacked in a place you didn't expect, or in a time you didn't expect. There's no way that anybody in the right mind who briefed this delegation did not expect to have that topic raised. You know, they try to put the South African media lie. Oh, they went there to talk about trade. No, they went there to repair a broken relationship that they broke, and they didn't. They didn't move the needle at all. The needle is still stuck on stupid, and stupid coming from the ANC and the GNU.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm just in my own personal capacity. I was on a panel discussion a few days before on CakeNet, and as part of the panel, I said one of my warnings was the biggest mistake that this South African delegation can make is to go there and thinking that they can teach Donald Trump a thing or two, that they can lecture him, that they can go there and just set the record straight by providing the facts. I'm genuine. My words were, they should not underestimate Trump and his administration. And my other critical question was an open-ended question. What is the South African delegation going to do if Donald Trump pulls out evidence, photographs, video? Now, I didn't expect that it was going to be a cinematic experience. I thought Trump was maybe going to show some pictures. Maybe he's going to play a video on his phone. I did not expect the lights to be dimmed, a cinematic screen to be rolled out. And then Trump just said, well, guys, I'm going to lock you in for a moment here. Let's watch a movie. I'm just going to watch let's watch some clips, some unedited, unadulterated South African rhetoric, political rhetoric for you. Even I couldn't predict that. But I mean, I knew there was something dramatic coming. I knew that Donald Trump and his administration are capable of doing research. They have access to the internet. You don't need hacker technology or some weird high-end futuristic tech to know what's going on in South Africa. You just need to Google. You just need to watch videos on YouTube. You just need to go on X. You just need to read what's being reported in the South African media itself. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I mean, this just shows a party that's still stuck in the Cold War, thinking that they can say one thing on the international stage and then domestically they can say another thing and nobody will be the wiser.
Well, in fact, another video that Trump didn't show was Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018, saying, and after Juju had been singing this stupid song for a number of years, he's welcome back in the ANC. We welcome him back, his natural home. This is where he and the EFF should be, in the ANC. After he claimed he disavowed Julius Malema, he lied to Trump's face, and Trump could have shown that video. I mean, could have shown that. So there were three things. Now, Rob Hersoff did a video about a week before I left South Africa, and he posted on his channel in which he urged President Trump to take 6 actions. One of them was to appoint a minority special envoy for minority rights in South Africa, and he mentioned me. Thank you for that, Rob. I appreciate that thought. But he did that video. So that was an appeal to President Trump. Before I left Gordons Bay, I made an appeal to President Ramaphosa and the delegation. And I mentioned 3 things specifically they should not do in their meeting with Donald Trump. Do not try to bribe the Trump administration. This is not about Starlink. This is not about rare earths in the Karoo or natural gas off the coast. It's not about that. It's not about bribery. And you're going to anger them if you try that. And they tried to bribe them. That's the first thing. Second thing I said is, do not presume that Donald Trump is a racist. Don't project your own racial bigotry onto Donald Trump. Donald Trump, and I pointed this out for some time when they talked about, well, we want to appoint a white Afrikaner to be the next ambassador, Rolf Meyer or Nell, or I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's their own insecurities, not Trump. And the third thing I said is that so I said racist. And then what was I'm sorry, I got lost in my moment there. There's 3 things. The third one was, I was waiting for you to finish. I had 3 of them lined up. But don't assume that Trump's a racist. Don't try to bribe him. Oh, and the last one is, don't lecture Trump. I said, please do not lecture Trump. Do not act as if he doesn't know what's going on. Trump knows what's going on. We have 19 national intelligence agencies. He's well informed. I know. I was an intelligence officer who wrote for the President of the United States. I know the process. I know how they're briefed every day. Now, they pick the hour they get briefed and they choose what they hear, but I know how it works. Trump is well informed. What people, these idiots on Nota Beloy or on DJ Sabu's channel commenting about, I'm a YouTuber lecturing, Black South Africans. No, I'm an intelligence analyst and a published author and academic, a political scientist, and a historian. and I'm simply telling things how they are. And these people don't get it. I tried to make the point, make it very clear. Do not lecture him. He knows what's going on. He doesn't need YouTube or Twitter boss to be informed. He's well informed. And so what does Trump, what does Ramaphosa do? Ramaphosa, first off, the question that was set up by a South African reporter, Mr. President, what will it take for you, for President Ramaphosa to convince you there's no white genocide? Oh, no, I'll take this question. I'll take this question. It will take President Trump listening. He must listen to South Africans. And notice I brought all his whitey friends here so he can listen to them. My goodness. Can you imagine? Let's just get this out real quick before I forget about it, because I don't want to have another senior moment. Have you met my white Minister of Agriculture?
Have you seen his complexion? Have you, I just want to underline, underscore, just emphasize in bold text, my white minister. Have you seen him? Have you seen how he looks like? Here, look at him. Just everyone, can the cameras focus on him, please?
Can you believe? I mean, imagine if Donald Trump had said, if Ramaphosa had come there and it was the first administration and he met with Trump and he goes, have I introduced you to my black Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson? He's a really good guy. He's kind of articulate. Could you imagine that? We'd still be hearing about how Trump is a racist by mentioning the guy's black, but not one media outlet on the planet has pointed it out. Now, I've pointed out every day, but none of the media will actually point out
but Chris,
bigotry.
you seem to be missing the point that the South African media has been emphasizing, and that's the fact that Donald Trump clearly gets his news from scrolling on social media. They say that he's being misled by just seeing videos, fake videos at that online, and being fooled. And just saying what he, not asking anyone to verify whether something is real. He's just going on instinct. That's what the media told me in South Africa.
I have seen the South African media, and I have a response for them. Meet my friend, bugger off money. Yeah, no, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, this Kyle, by the way, I have a recommendation for Kyle Cowen over at Cockprot 24. Just get a room. Invite Twatterboss to dinner. I know you want to date him. You're desperate to meet the guy. I mean, your obsession with outing Twatterboss over non-news is really becoming nauseating. Seriously, I don't know Twatterboss personally, but I suspect, maybe some Druvors, maybe some roses, nice candlelit, lodge or something like that. It's, I mean, you've reported he lives in Gordons Bay. I'm sure you can find a lovely restaurant in Stellenbosch where you can go. Come on, man. This is ridiculous.
And Chris, you can confirm that the Donald Trump definitely also does not know Twatterboss personally. That's also a fact.
Well, as far as I know, that's the case. But I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, that's not what I've been told. I've been told that Donald Trump is making policies based on what this individual in South Africa is posting on his X feed.
Of course. And then, of course, News 24 offers no substantiation, no sourcing for that whatsoever. Have they talked to Donald Trump? Have they talked to Elon Musk? Do they have evidence? They don't. They're just making it up as they go. This isn't news. It's propaganda. It's in the Spanish-American War, our newspapers under William Randolph Hearst were irresponsible. And there was a term for what they were, yellow journalism. And that's what this is, yellow journalism.
And the other thing that's also very interesting, Chris, and I think you've noticed, is that there's a lot of fact-checking, but I've not seen a single fact-check of Ramaphosa, and there's plenty to fact-check.
That's correct. There has not been. It was immediately from the New York Times, from the South African media, from the Daily Maverick? Oh, fact-check, or no, it was Times Live. Fact-check of Trump. Look, Trump said some things that were incorrect, obviously, but it doesn't downgrade or diminish what was said. He mistakenly said these are burial mounds. Of course, they're not burial mounds. They're too close together to be burial mounds, and nobody would bury people along the side of a highway like that. The point is that he misspoke because he was trying to take a calm approach to this, and he got it wrong. But it doesn't diminish the fact that those crosses represented murder.
It's a real video. It's a real protest.
Correct. It was in Normandy, and I covered it when it happened. I remember that happening. It was in September of 2020. It was after the Raffertys were murdered. The horrible, and that was around the time that of course Brendan Horner was also murdered. And so this protest was done in near Normandy, and this isn't too far from property that Ramaphosa owns. The fact that was, to me, was the golden moment of this whole thing. Mr. President, have they told you where this is at? I'd like to know. I've never seen this before. Where's it at? And then Trump says, it's in South Africa. Oh, that was so, oh my gosh. That should have been the headline. Right. Where's this at? That should have been the headline. Where's this at? I've never seen this before. What a liar. What an absolute liar. Did they actually think people are that stupid?
It's like telling the world that you're the biggest Bob Dylan fan, and then someone plays you that song, The Times Are A-Changing, and you're like, what's the song? It's so who's performing the song?
Is this the Who? Yeah, that's a good analogy. That's exactly right. Wow, I love Bob Dylan, but I've never heard this song.
I've never heard this one.
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of like
some of his lesser known works. It's just flown under my radar.
It's kind of like some of the emails I'm getting. I'm a big fan of your channel. Watch all your videos. Do I have to have a passport to come? Clearly, you haven't watched a single one of my videos if you're asking if you need a passport to be part of the refugee program. Anyway, yeah, exactly right.
I mean, Chris, the question that I also asked this week is the fact that imagine if this meeting had been behind closed doors, if we, the public, the American public and the South African public and the world did not have access to listen to this absolute train wreck, you would have been dependent on information on how this meeting went on politicians and journalists, the same politicians and journalists that are telling you it was a roaring success. I mean, that was with many meetings in the past in the Oval Office, that was the case, but Trump has changed the game. He's now actually given not a full transparency into all the meetings and discussions, but he's giving the public at least a large chunk of a view into what is actually being discussed. What is the tone like? What are the topics that are being tabled? And I think that's a very refreshing change. The alternative is horrible to think that you'd have to be dependent on these people that are telling you it was a massive success is such a scary thought.
Well, I agree 100%. And what's really happening here is that Trump has peeled off the veneer that people think that these politicians are larger than life, that they're smart, that they're clever, that they know what's going on. These idiots from South Africa, from France, from Germany, from the UK who come here are being exposed for the frauds that they are. I mean, Ramaphosa is either the biggest liar in the world or the dumbest box of rocks in South Africa. Never knew about this video? Come on. And then the nonsense trying to claim it's a deep fake and it's not, and this was in the Congo. What a comical comment that was, because that's because some idiot took a story from South African media that was published in South Africa that talks about issues in Africa, but puts a photograph of what happened in the Congo on there, and they try to rubbish that. These people are just propagandists. They lie of the highest order. They cannot rubbish anything that was claimed in those videos. They can't claim that those weren't the crosses because the names were on those crosses for the people who were brutally murdered in South Africa. And the first photograph that was shown in that stack was the woman who was attacked while I was in South Africa. It was in the press before I left just a few days ago. And then they try to claim that it wasn't real. These people are disgraceful. And then I watched Cockprot 24. That's, of course, my name for News 24. Cockprot 24. I watched them because, I know that's Afrikaans, but it's also English. Kaka is poo. So Cockprot 24. I watched their story today in which they take social media influencers in South Africa and they make fun and light of what happened. You people are disgusting, vile, repulsive human beings. To diminish the suffering of people like Edward Neumeister, Sifatso Pule, or the black cattle farmer, the Indian mother who had her throat slit on the Ayub farm, Edward Neumeister, and all these other people who've been butchered, the Raffertys, over the years. You are disgraceful human beings to make light of that, and shame on you.
And who also is disgraceful is everyone in that delegation that sat there smirking and laughing while videos were being played of a prominent politician chanting about murdering citizens of their country based on their identity. The ministers in that delegation, Ramaphosa as well, were sitting there laughing, sitting there smirking. I mean, it must have been shocking for an American audience seeing that image, Chris.
Well, it was for most Americans who are objective. Most of the world is objective. I mean, the veneer has been pulled off. The problem that I have is that there aren't more media outlets exposing this. I actually saw a journalist, I think from ENCA, ask Ramaphosa real questions at the funeral for the deputy leader of the Women's Youth League, and asking real questions, which he didn't answer. He says, I'm at a funeral. I'm not going to answer those questions. But the thing that, look, I'm always about a fair disclosure and full disclosure. In that situation, one minister responded appropriately. And I'm not a fan of his because he's proposed the racist black tax of 3% to Griffin corporations. That's Parks Tao. Parks Tao's demeanor and his behavior were appropriate for the situation. He didn't smirk. He didn't smile. He didn't deny. He sat there. I mean, look, I'm not trying to promote the guy, but compared to Steenhuisen and Ronnie Lamola and that scumbag Nshivini Kumbudzu, who sat there with that stupid smirk on her face the whole time. Parks Tao was the appropriate gentleman diplomat in that. I'll give him that. I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but that I got to give credit where credit's due.
And then also, Chris, I mean, you mentioned him now, John Steenhuisen coming out today, calling Cyril Ramaphosa a great builder, and Cyril Ramaphosa coming out vehemently defending the Kill the Boer chant. As soon as he's back, as soon as he's out of the grilling Oval Office, away from the foreign cameras, away from the international press, when he gets back to South Africa, he's back to defending a chant that calls for the killing of South Africans based on their identity. And in the same day, John Steenhuisen, former opposition leader John Steenhuisen, did you know he was white? He's Cyril's white minister. I just want to underline that fact again. Cyril thinks it's very important that everyone knows. He comes out today and he says, "Oh, we were in the room, the builders, the great builders in that delegation," and he calls Cyril Ramaphosa a builder. What is he built? All he does is divide. All he does is push more policies that threaten private property rights and keep scapegoating minorities in his country for the failures of his party.
He's not even a successful businessman. The man was handed over $300 million of equity and he hasn't turned it into anything. You give me $300 million of equity in 1994 and I'm a multi-billionaire today. I guarantee it. Right. It doesn't take much. You just put it in the bank and get savings alone. You know, right. But the guy's not a builder. He's not a success in anything he's done other than BSing. Listen, it was very disheartening. And the Democratic Alliance is part and parcel of this evil government now. They've been in for a year and all they've achieved is sat by with no influence as Ramaphosa signed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act into law, discriminated against all South Africans, not just Afrikaners, and also proposed a 3% black tax and then signed into law expropriation without compensation, showing that the DA is neutered and has no influence whatsoever with Ramaphosa. And we have the idiocy of Dean McPherson saying recently that nil compensation is a form of compensation, and John Steenhuisen playing rah-rah for Ramaphosa. Listen, I have not revealed some things I know, but John Steenhuisen revealed to me personally who he really is. And he's not the good person you think he is, folks. I'll leave it at that without saying anything more. But John Steenhuisen has found himself in a difficult position and has refused to do the right thing. He should have resigned as leader of the Democratic Alliance and let someone else lead that party, because he clearly can't lead the party and be Cyril's white boy, which is what he is. The nonsense coming from this man and from Ramaphosa about an economy that has great things ahead, like the comments in Parliament today, a 1% GDP growth, which is less than population growth and less than inflation, both those things. South Africa is sliding backwards. This is a country where the infrastructure has been destroyed utterly, where racial relations have been tarnished by these people, and where there's no growth whatsoever. Cyril promised $100 billion in foreign direct investment 8 years ago or 7 years ago. Where is that? It's not there. Some has come, but it's only come from companies that don't have to build factories like Google and Amazon. They don't have to build anything. They come there, they use the software services, and they rent a few buildings, and that's it. But nobody's building steel plants. Nobody's building automotive factories. All that money's being pulled out. Cyril has eviscerated South Africa's economy. And to listen to John Steenhuisen talk about this, it's disheartening.
Right. And I mean, there was another moment for Donald Trump to prove that he knows a lot more about South Africa than politicians from South Africa when Steenhuisen made that point that, oh, no, the EFF and the MK are just fringe parties. These are tiny little microscopic little parties that nobody's ever heard of. And Trump's like, this guy's filling 100,000 full stadium. What are you talking about? Like, yeah, and in addition to that, I mean, if you look at Juju's Twitter account, he has 4.4 million followers. Right. That's not trivial in a country of 63 million people. In the South African parliament. He's the leader of the fourth largest party in South Africa. If you combine the MK and the EFF parties together, they're larger than the DA. Yeah, indeed. They're almost as large as the ANC together. Wow. Yeah, no, it's Trump did call it out, you know, and then I like Trump's comment, which a little surprised me. Why don't you arrest this guy? Well, I mean, it was a criminal act in 2003. The courts declared that song was hate speech, and you could be arrested for it. But today, apparently, you can sing about murdering white people. Oh. But I imagine if somebody sang a "Murder the Case" song, that wouldn't go very well. Oh. I saw some media personalities in your media sphere, Chris, claim now that, again, also, it's just a small little 10% party, the EFF. How do you think the American media would react if the Kill All Minorities party was just 10% of the American Senate? Well, I mean, if there was a party in this country that advocated for white supremacy and killing Black Americans and it had 1%, they would lose their minds, let alone 10%. Or if there was a party here advocating for redistribution of, and they had one seat. Yeah, if they had one seat, they would lose their mind. In fact, they lost their mind over David Duke, who never served in Congress. That guy who was in the Klan in Louisiana 30 years ago, they lost their mind. Endless ink devoted to one guy that nobody paid any attention to. I mean, we already see it here. They constantly rail on about the Ku Klux Klan.
Ernst, I'm 59 again this year. So I have never in my entire life ever once seen a gathering of the Ku Klux Klan, and I've lived in virtually every state in the lower 48 throughout my life. Never once. The only time I ever saw the Klan was on television in 1978 when they went to Columbus, Ohio, and they were going to have a big protest to protest court order busing to move black students into white schools and white students into black schools because schools were segregated, not intentionally, but because where people settled, that's where you go to school. So the federal government interfered in our education system by forcing people to go to schools that weren't in their districts. Anyway, they went to protest, and there were like 18 people standing there wearing their white sheets at the Capitol building in Columbus. We all laughed at them. It was ridiculous. So this is a narrative they push all the time. Imagine if we had a party that actually had 10%. The media would go nuts. Look at Germany. The Alternative for Deutschland is not a racist party. It's not a Nazi party. But look how the government is spying on them legally to undermine a real, genuine political party in the German political space. So imagine if it was here. People lose their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, the other thing that also stood out to me was the fact that just some of the lies. Now, seeing as the media in South Africa are not going to be fact checking some of them, I just want to point out some lies and fact check them live.
Go ahead.
I mean, the one lie, one of the most blatant is when Cyril really started squirming, and Trump was like, "Why don't you condemn this chant, the kill the Boer, kill the farmer chant?" And Cyril was like, "Oh, we always have condemned it. We condemn it all the time. It's constant. We don't support this. We condemn this." And I thought, no, you don't. When on Human Rights Day 2025, when that chant was done again by Julius Malema, AfriForum wrote a letter to the president addressing him. We got a response back saying we received your letter. And then in that letter, we simply asked, condemn the chant, kill the Boer on a public platform, unreservedly and no uncertain terms. That's the least you can do. And the president's spokesperson came back to us, and he answered questions of the media regarding AfriForum's request. And the president's spokesperson said very, very arrogantly, the president will do no such thing. So that's just recent history. And here he just landed back in South Africa. There's more. Well, he landed back in South Africa a few days ago, and today he told the media, no, we don't. He doesn't oppose the "Kill the Boer" song. It's defended speech in South Africa, and he defended the chant is simply a struggle chant. It's not an incitement of violence. No, kill the X is incitement of violence. Kill the Y, kill the Z. That is incitement of violence. You can't just hide behind it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Yeah, no, in fact, you need no further proof the man lied. I mean, you have to show the 2018 video when he said, "Welcome back to the party. We disavow." No, it's absolutely true. You're right about that. I did hear about AfriForum's letter, and I did see Vincent Magwenya lie and say, well, I didn't lie. I told the truth. He's not going to repudiate that.
Ramaphosa lied about what he said.
Yeah, Ramaphosa lied, but Magwenya was very, very condescending and arrogant, like you said. No, they have no intention of backing down from this. And this is what I find so vile and repulsive, Ernst. During the apartheid era, I was a young man coming of age and a young adult and serving in uniform later, university, then uniform, back to university. While this is all unfolding, and apartheid came to an end after I returned into the Army as a young officer. And the world was rightly upset about the racist policies that wound up being attached to apartheid. A separate development is not necessarily an evil thing, but the racist policies that came along with it. People were upset, and the world said it should end. And much of the world united at some point after 1985 to force South Africa to end apartheid. Now, the National Party ended it on its own terms, but people were upset that Black people were being discriminated in education, in the economy, and in where they lived. Why are people upset about the same thing happening to Indians, coloreds, and whites today? I mean, I guess it's okay to be racially discriminatory towards white folks. We've seen it here in America with this affirmative action, a racist law that was in place for decades, which was finally overturned because it's unconstitutional. You know, I saw Ramaphosa today say that, we have to, according to the Constitution, pay attention to what happened in the past. That's true. But it doesn't mean you have to be racist and have racist laws and bigotry today against the minority. You can acknowledge the past. You can rectify the past without discriminating against the population today. But they want to discriminate.
And you don't fix human rights violations in the past with human rights violations in the present. That's like fixing an old pothole by digging a new one. That's broken logic. That's not going to work. But I mean, In Parliament today, again, President Ramaphosa emphasized that his government has a right to discriminate, that we when we do it, it's positive. When the NP does it, it's negative. When the South African government tells businesses to discriminate based on race, when the South African government tells primary schools to kick children or keep children out of school sports teams because of their skin color, oh, that's positive. That's justice. When the South African government creates an environment where CEOs in this country write internal memorandums telling all their branches that we are putting a total freeze on the hiring or any hiring or promotion of white people, as was the case with Dis-Chem recently. That is, according to the president of South Africa, that's just simple justice. It's redress. No, it's not redress. It's revenge. It's saying that
it is revenge.
It's our turn to discriminate. It is now our turn to wield the sword of discrimination. And you're going to sit in the corner. You're going to be sit there quietly, and you're not going to make a fuss about it. That's what the ANC is telling the minority groups of this country, is that, and if you dare tell the world about it, that's going to be treasonous, and we're going to investigate you for treason. If you dare tell the world about what's going on in this country. That's the message that they've been sending to the minorities of this country, an uncompromising message, and a message that there's no bridge building, there's no reaching out, there's no dialogue. It's only raw. We are in charge. Might makes right. We will do what we want. If we want to discriminate, we'll discriminate. That's what the South African government, the ANC-led government, not the government of national unity, the ANC-led government in South Africa is telling minorities even today on the 27th of May, 2025.
And what's especially obnoxious and nauseating about it is that they have willing accomplices in business, the so-called white monopoly capital. There's no such thing as that, but the wealthy white elites, the white liberals in the media, in business, and the wealthy, they're all part and parcel of this. They deny what's going on. They're not the ones. This is so when it comes like with the refugee program, I had a number of people interested in the refugee program, and they're rubbishing people who want to stay. And I said, stop it. You don't live in the shoes of those people. They attacked AfriForum in solidarity for the visit to the States. And I said, stop it. I said, first off, there will always be Afrikaners in South Africa. So, leave people alone if they choose to stay here. It's their choice. It's their home. It's in their blood. The soil is part of them. And at the same time, we've got people on the other side who are rubbishing those who want to leave, calling them losers, toothless oaks who amount to nothing. And that's nonsense.
To the president of South Africa, you call them cowards.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Afrikaners.
Yes, of course. Yeah, just adding to that.
Yeah. But talking about Afrikaners who are against their own groups, typical sort of behavior in your community where people attack others. And I'm like, knock it off. I know $6 millionaires. The moment they get out, or they get approval, they're gone. They're leaving. And I know people who have skills in IT, people who have skills in business, people who own businesses. They will leave in a heartbeat. This isn't just toothless people living in squatter camps west of Pretoria. That's nonsense. People are hut full of being discriminated against. And if they see an opportunity to leave, some are going to leave. I'm not encouraging anybody to leave, but my point here is that the lies need to stop. And the lies are coming from all over. The lies are coming from the left and black supremacists and white liberals, and they're coming from the right, white supremacists and white right-wingers who are lying about what's going on here. It really needs to stop. Let people be who they are, because I haven't walked a mile in the shoes of the people that want to leave, and I haven't walked a mile in the shoes of people who want to stay, and neither has anyone else. So leave people alone.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, Chris. It's a bit outside of the just what happened in the Oval Office, but it is incredibly important that I think if when it comes to the topic of the Afrikaner refugees, it needs to be a two-way street when it comes to understanding why people choose to leave and want to leave, but also those who have left and who want to leave also need to understand why some choose to stay. And the future, as I've said many times, especially now in recent times, the future of Afrikaners is undeniably, and it is undeniably a divided future, a dual future between a diaspora community and a core central community here in South Africa. The cultural core is always going to be here at the southern tip of Africa, and the ties between that cultural core and the diaspora community have to be strengthened. They have to be very strong, because the cultural core here in South Africa, the cultural center, is going to be responsible for feeding that all the satellites out there with Afrikaans programming, with information about what's going on here in South Africa, with opportunities for those who maybe in the future want to come back by creating and building educational institutions here and state-proofing communities here in South Africa, maybe even giving many of those who have left, unfortunately, a reason to consider coming back. That's the dynamic that I see happening, that dual existence. But the central ingredient in that dual existence is the fact that both sides need to understand the other and give the other side the opportunity to make their own personal choice. Whether it's leave or stay is a deeply personal choice, and it needs to be respected both ways. And I'm glad that you focused on that, Chris. As I said, it's a bit to the side of what happened in the past week, but it's intimately connected to the broader picture of what we saw unfold the past few months.
Well, in fact, it is, and that's why I brought it up. But you're correct. There's already been this diaspora separation that's been going on for a number of decades, since 1994. And I think a number of Afrikaner groups belatedly recognized this and started taking action. AfriForum is out in the forefront of this, trying to represent Afrikaners around the world, but keep the cultural continuity in South Africa where the community was formed. And I think that there's a very strong role for Afrikaner groups to do this, particularly AfriForum in the future. I think people need to stop rubbishing AfriForum. A lot of people were angry saying AfriForum was speaking for them. I never interpreted what AfriForum did coming to the States to be that. Also, a lot of people thought AfriForum betrayed South Africans and the Afrikaners with their visit here. I didn't see that at all. Trump made his decision before they came here. It wasn't as a consequence of AfriForum. I know AfriForum has had a long relationship with legislators, people like Ted Cruz and others here, but those decisions weren't reached because of influence from AfriForum. That was just more information, and the information came after decisions were made. So Trump made his decisions in the Oval Office. He decided on the 7 February, executive order based on the behavior of the ANC over the past 2.5 decades, which has rubbished our national interests. And I've talked about it endlessly, from refusing to sign an Article 98 waiver for the Rome Statute back in the year 1999-2000, all the way up into the Lady R and training Chinese fighter pilots at South African academies. These all things work against our interest. That's why South Africa's in trouble. The racial discrimination against minorities is just the tip of the iceberg. It's much deeper than that.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean, that's the other thing, is the just disgusting comments coming from the commentariat in South Africa, the comment class, in regards to Trump's comments of saying, well, there's very bad things happening in South Africa. And especially when those refugees, Afrikaner refugees, arrived in the United States, the disgusting comments from the comment class and the commentariat continued, where they pretty much said different variations of, what are you fleeing from? Making videos of themselves sitting next to their luxurious pools, their palace houses, in their high security Gulf estates, saying, well, what are you guys fleeing from? What are you guys so worried about? Look how beautiful it is. Look at my beautiful mountain view. Very bad things are happening in South Africa. The top 1% of this country, many in the top, not all of them, many in the top 1% of this country, used the past few months to parade around like peacocks on social media to, in big fat quotation marks, refute Donald Trump's claims about South Africa by using their own cartoonishly luxurious lives as proof. It pretty much is a let them eat cake moment for the social media age, saying, well, what are you talking about? Human rights violations in South Africa, Mr. Trump? Look at me relaxing next to my swimming pool that's the size of many people's houses. What are you talking about? How can there be human rights violations in South Africa if I can sip a pina colada in my garden? That's the type of videos we saw go out into the world, and that is genuine misinformation. That is information being sent out with the intent to deceive the outside world in regards to what's really happening in South Africa. But no, of course, those people were coddled. They were celebrated by the media in South Africa as brave truth tellers, but all they were doing was just showing the disconnect with the country that they live in.
Well, when we go back to their office, I mean, I have a very simple solution to all this, and just it ends this nonsense to begin with. First off, the offer of refugee status wasn't because of crime. So you can sit there and cry and say we're a violent country. It was nice of Kasatu's president to say we're a violent country. It was nice of her to admit that. But it's not about crime. It's not about drones. It's not about, letting Starlink in. It's not about crime. It's also not about farmers. It's also not about white people. It's not about white people. It's not about farmers. There is a simple reason why the executive order was signed and why refugee status is being offered to those of Afrikaner ethnicity and ethnic minorities, or racial minorities. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Racial discrimination, 140 plus laws that racially discriminate against South Africans. And for those of you who are white Afrikaners and try to say Indians and colors aren't affected, you're full of it. The law may say that Indians and colors are considered black for BE, but in practice, when it's applied, coloreds and Indians are discriminated just as badly and just as frequently as whites are. It's just a shroud. So the bottom line here is that when they want to talk about farmers, it's not germane. When they want to talk about crime, it's not germane. Now, there may be elements why someone made a case that they were a victim of crime because of race. That could be true. But the reason these people are being offered shelter is not because they're rich or poor or they're white or they're black. It's because they're suffering from racial discrimination unjustly. And that's the bottom line. And no matter what the government of South Africa says, how they refute 100 plus laws that are racially discriminatory, they can't. They cannot. They simply obfuscate and distract. That's the end of discussion. Get rid of 140 racist laws, and then this program can end. Case closed.
Yeah, but all they did was sat there in the Oval Office and deny. But I mean, that tactic doesn't work anymore when you can just when you can dim the lights and play a video, deny, it doesn't work anymore. Then you are locked in a room and confronted with the realities of your country. And then the best they could do is pretty much tell Donald Trump, don't believe your lying eyes. Stop looking at the screen. Look at me. Listen to me. That's what Cyril Ramaphosa pretty much did there, is don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe what you're seeing on screen. It's not real. And that's what the media by extension has been doing ever since as well, saying, well, everything that was shown there is not real. It's all misinformation, disinformation, whatever buzzword they want to use. It's one of the things that I think it should be more seriously and more frequently called is farm murder denialism. Mm-hmm. They are farm murder deniers. People that are saying these videos aren't real, these protests aren't real, farm murders aren't happening, there are no murdering of farmers in South Africa, are farm murder deniers. Call them what they are. They need a label, and that's, I think, the proper label for them: farm murder deniers.
100%. And there's a couple things about this that are just, first off, we all know that denial is not a river in Egypt. It's actually a situation happening in South Africa. Mm-hmm. It really is. This is the obsession with farmers, though, by the delegation is just disheartening because, as I said, it's about racial discrimination. So here's the interesting thing. If it's all fake, if it's all unreal, where are the denials? Where is the articulation by President Ramaphosa in his press conference afterwards saying, well, that really wasn't an actual video. That was a deep fake. He never said that. He never said that never took place. He never said that Malema didn't sing those things. There were no denials because they can't deny it because it's true. It's true. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to point out, most viewers in this channel's history, Chris, thank you very much for helping us break that record. 1,200 people watching live, absolutely smashing the previous record of most live viewers for a stream. Thank you very much, Chris. That's fantastic. Also, just want to point out, anyone here that in my audience that does not recognize my guest, Colonel Chris Wyatt does fantastic work, fantastic channel. Go check out his channel as well. And I don't have super chats on my channel. So if you want to support anything, if you want to give money towards any cause, you can become an AfriForum member. That helps a lot more than giving me a few extra bucks. I think it'll make a massive difference. So if you're not an AfriForum member yet, become an AfriForum member. There's a link in the description of this video that you can follow to become a member. It's a very easy process. And as I said, if you were considering giving a super chat, there's no super chats here. You can just send it towards AfriForum and becoming a member there.
I'm confused, Ernst. Before you used to have super chats turned on.
I did, but then, Chris, I came to the conclusion that at the moment my audience is at a size where I still read all of the comments. Well, when you're a guest, I can't read all of the comments, but when I stream, usually I can read all of the comments, and I don't feel people giving a super chat to highlight their comment doesn't really serve a purpose because I read everyone's comments anyway. So I've told my audience now repeatedly, when my channel gets to a point where I can't read all the chats anymore, when it gets to your size of a channel, then I'll consider bringing it back, because then the people giving money or making a super chat actually get something for the money that they're giving, because it highlights their comment. So that's the conclusion that I came to.
That's the logic. I got you. Well, no, I mean, because you talked about we've helped you get the largest audience ever, but I seem to recall a couple of years ago you had mentioned to me in passing that you'd never gotten a payout from YouTube. And we
That was,
surprised you.
yeah.
We surprised you. We came over as super chat. I think you made at least 10,000
Mm.
Rand that day, if I recall.
It was a fantastic episode. I'm trying to remember the title of that episode now. I remember the thumbnail. It was a braai fire. But you can just search for all the episodes on my channel for the one where Chris Wyatt is one of the guests in the title, and the thumbnail of a braai fire is the one where that happened. That was a fantastic experience. Yeah, Chris, it was nice to get those super chats, but yeah, in the meantime or since then, I've come to the conclusion I'd rather have it serve a bit more of a clear purpose for my audience. But that's my personal choice.
Well, that's cool, but that was fun that day. I really loved the look on your
I
face
really
when we
enjoyed it.
surprised you.
It was a fantastic experience. So I really enjoyed it. Chris, I also wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on specifically from an American experience. We've touched on it, but I want to emphasize again for the audience, the normal guy on the street in America, Joe Sixpack, the housewife sitting watching that interview, the normal run-of-the-mill street-level American that's just red, white, and blue, but no knowledge about South Africa, really, not that I expect him to have like an encyclopedic knowledge. When they saw what transpired there in the Oval Office, you as an American, can you give us some insight? What were they seeing? What would their reactions have been generally to what they saw there?
Well, I think that most objective people saw it were gobsmacked that someone would run around and do that, and they're a member of parliament. I think that's what's nice when Trump pointed out, this is an official in your government. And they tried to say, but he's not in the government. He is in the government. He sits in parliament. He's in elected office, and he's allowed to say those sort of things. I think a lot of people are gobsmacked. You know, before this visit, there hasn't, a lot of South Africans like to think that South Africa really matters. And I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but it doesn't matter geopolitically. And it has not been an issue. Most Americans couldn't tell you where it's at or anything about it. The refugee program brought a little bit of attention to it, but not much. However, this meeting last week, every social media commentator is latching on, trying to get clicks and attention, all acting like they're experts on South Africa now. And I find that annoying, but at the same time, it's also beneficial because it means a lot of people are talking about South Africa, and it hasn't stopped. A lot of times it's a one-day news cycle, 2-day rinse, repeat, it's gone. People are still talking about South Africa. Those who are politically inclined, even people who aren't politically inclined, are like, what the hell is going on in South Africa? What is Trump about? What is he onto something here? And people are paying attention. Social media is blowing up with a lot of American accounts. A lot of Americans are stepping forward, offering to help refugees who have arrived here. That's not necessary, but it's kind of them to do that. And almost every major, even the Canadian guy, for that guy, I can't remember saying that he's an attorney up there. Even he's talking about it, and Rubin's talking about it, and Crowder's talking about it, and everyone's talking about South Africa and what's going on there. So I think that that visit served a great purpose, but much more needs to be said and done. It needs to not die in the conversation and disappear with the news cycle, and I won't let it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Chris, well, one of the other things also emphasized during this whole episode was the the strong importance of alternative media, having many voices analyzing what we saw there. Back in the day, I mean, even if this meeting in all its transparency would have happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the analysis would have been exclusively just mainstream talking heads, pundits, lambasting Trump and hailing Ramaphosa as the pinnacle of political leadership. But today there's actually alternative voices. If you don't like what you're hearing on television or on the radio, if it's just a bit too sucking up to the government for your liking, if the pro-government propaganda gets a little bit too sweet and overplayed for your ear, a bit too rich for your blood, you can always go to some alternative voices online, YouTube, on Telegram, any other on X, and go get some alternative opinions as a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Well, I would argue that the reason why the ANC's gotten away with destroying the infrastructure and imposing racist laws and destroying the economy and social fabric of South Africa since 2008 at least, but arguably since the late 1990s, is because there was no alternative that people paid attention to. This sort of sphere hadn't really reached maturity until after COVID. And after the censorship began to ease a bit on Facebook and on YouTube, now you actually get this sort of thing. Before, you had talking heads like Tim Pool that really know what they're talking about, just pontificating something, and people would follow up, and you get a bunch of devoted sycophants would follow channels like that. That's not an attack on Tim Pool. I'm just making a statement of what it once was. Now you have insightful people. It's funny, like the racists who are commenting on my conversation with DJ Sabu and Nota Beloy are like, look at this YouTuber lecturing Black South Africans. Dude, I'm not a YouTuber. I'm a historian, as I said earlier, political scientist, a published author, an academic, and a 30-year intelligence professional. So this isn't exactly a YouTuber. I bring a lot more to it. This just happens to be the platform I'm using to reach a lot of people. And a lot of people are in that sphere now. And you're a professional. You've gone about with your business here and perfected your craft. You're doing quite well as well. And there are a number of people out there doing that. It's not just talking heads eating crisp, sitting on their lawn chairs, at a braai, giving their opinions. Actually, Franz Cronier does YouTube videos. We see David Ansara does YouTube videos. The reach is not as good as it should be, but these are talented, insightful people that know what they're talking about. And even cultural figures like Steve Hofmeyer making videos, which are very insightful. So I think that you're right about that the narrative was one-sided, and it's still one-sided in many respects, but there's alternatives. And very soon, folks, Ernst, this week the Truth Report is supposed to debut, and we will see if people go watch it.
Absolutely, Chris. And I mean, just today, I was one of my interviews that I did was with Alec Hogg on Biz News. You can find that interview on their YouTube channel. It already has, I think, about 50,000 views. I'm very, very happy with how it turned out. We talked about this meeting, did a little bit of analysis there, so you can find that on Biz News if you like. And then also there was another interview that I recently did on an American channel as well. On the channel's called Matt Christensen, and he also wanted to talk about South Africa. I went to his channel to talk about South Africa as well. But those are just the tip of the iceberg. I've had so much curiosity and interest from people all across the world wanting to know more about South Africa, and I'm glad that they have all these different alternative voices here in South Africa to give them the truth, because unfortunately the legacy media is not giving them the true story. They are much too busy being the PR companies of the ANC. If you pay a subscription to, for example, News 24 in South Africa, you're paying an additional tax with a smile, because you're just paying for the ANC's PR company. So when it comes to particularly the truth getting out about South Africa, I mean, that's the title of tonight's episode, when the ugly truth about South Africa breaches containment. That's what happened. The truth has breached containment. The ANC have lost control of the narrative. They can no longer just go out there and in an interview say there are no when challenged about race laws in South Africa, they say, oh no, it's positive discrimination, or about farm murders, saying, oh, there's no farm murders in South Africa, and then the interviewer is just like, oh, thank you for clearing that up. Next question. That's not the reality they live in anymore. And I think to give him some credit, Mr. Fikile Mbalula, Mr. Fix himself, actually spoke some very, very crystal clear truth the other day when he said Donald Trump is torturing us. He said, but what Donald Trump is doing, he's tormenting us, meaning us, the ANC. And he's right. It was actually quite sobering hearing that, or actually quite very refreshing hearing that sober truth, that very frank admission from the ANC, one of the main ANC cadres himself.
And what's ironic about that is Trump has done very little. Trump has not imposed an embargo. Trump has not banned American businesses. He's not put sanctions on South Africa. Now there are tariffs, but that's part of the reciprocal global tariff program. He also ended aid, but he ended aid for everybody, suspended. And then South Africa had to act like fools, and then they got it suspended forever. I mean, that's the only action he's taken. But those are handouts that we give. That's our money. He's not taken any action. South Africans have not been suspended from SWIFT banking system. No targeted sanctions against any leaders. And he's had 2 Truth Social post and executive order, and he's answered a few questions here and there, and they are the ones who screwed this meeting up, not Trump. They came unprepared. They came thinking they could bribe him with rare earth elements and natural gas and Starlink, and they thought that they could show off their whiteys. By the way, I'm filing a case against the government of South Africa and the presidency, because clearly their delegation was non-BEE compliant. There are far too many whiteys in that delegation there, Ernst. I mean, we had John Steenhuisen, we had Ernie Els, we had Johan Rupert, and we had also Retief Hussein. I mean, that's far too many white guys. There shouldn't have been more than one if we have BEE compliant.
Yeah, well, big kudos to Retief Goosen. He was just too honest. He couldn't, he didn't try to dance around the fact. He just said, well, here's the experience of a farmer in South Africa. And he told the truth, and kudos to him. I just saw someone point out as well, yeah, 45 million views on AfriForum's documentary on X after Elon Musk deal. My English is running out. I almost said after he dealed it, after he shared it. I mean, that's a fantastic experience, seeing that happen. I mean, when the documentary, it's called, for those who don't know, AfriForum put out a documentary called "Is Trump Right About South Africa?" It's available for free on X and on YouTube, and it's about the facts about South Africa regarding race laws and the Expropriation Act, about Kill the Boer and farm murders. And that documentary got about 150,000 views on YouTube, which if the story had stopped there, I would have just seen it as a massive success. But then I shared it on X a few weeks later, and then Elon Musk shared it. And now that documentary sits on 45 million views, which is just an astronomical amount of eyes. I mean, I still can't really fathom what happened, just how big of an exposure that is for the truth about South Africa. And I'm so glad that happened to that documentary, because in that documentary, AfriForum knew that we were going to be under a major microscope when it comes to daring to talk about what's happening in South Africa and daring to embarrass the South African government with facts. So we made sure every single claim in that documentary is backed up by a source on screen or by one of the speakers in the documentary. So if anything, any claim in that documentary is disputed, saying where does this information come from? What's the source? Well, the source is there on screen, or you just have to listen. The person told you where this information comes from. Because as I keep saying, don't just, when people talk about South Africa, whether it's me, AfriForum, Colonel Chris Wyatt, don't just believe what we say, research what we say. If either of us say something that sounds strange about South Africa and you think to yourself, that can't be right, go check it out. Go see if we're right. Go do your research. Go look into it. I never discourage people to not go look into what I'm saying. I encourage people to go look into what I'm saying. And I know you follow the same approach, Chris.
I do, absolutely. You know, it's if people are embarrassed by facts, then they have a character flaw. The United States has close to $40 trillion of federal deficit. That's a problem. Our currency has been weakened by overspending and overborrowing, which has hampered our economic growth. That's a fact. We have a homeless problem, particularly in California, because of the failure of authorities out there. That's a problem. I'm not embarrassed by that. That's reality. If the South African government is embarrassed by the fact that they allow a 2-year-old infant to be shot in the head because she was crying when her parents are being murdered, that was an AfriForum documentary too, by the way, a few years ago. If they're embarrassed by that, they should be embarrassed by it. They should be shamed by it, that such a thing happens. There's no deterrence to committing violent crime in South Africa whatsoever. The justice system is a joke. The police don't have the resources, and some of them are corrupt. I mean, they admit thousands of their service weapons are missing. They can't account for them. Yet they're busy trying to disarm security guards, so that the last line of defense, or the only line of defense for many South Africans. People shouldn't be embarrassed by the truth. They should be shamed by the truth. And instead of calling people treasonous or committing treason because they expose
those who
the
don't
truth.
know, AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement are currently under investigation for high treason. That's not a meme. That's not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. There's an actual high treason investigation opened against the Solidarity Movement and AfriForum and Solidarity, the trade union, for daring to speak the truth about South Africa, for daring to send a delegation to meet with senior Trump officials to tell the truth about what's happening in South Africa.
To do the same thing that the ANC did during the apartheid era, rushing off to Washington, begging for help, rushing off to London, going to Bonn, asking and begging for intervention and for sanctions. You know, not that AfriForum even did that, but talking with foreign leaders.
That's the
what
irony.
ANC
Is
did.
AfriForum even demanding sanctions on South Africa? We're not even demanding punishment for the South African population. We're demanding that those sanctions be laser focused on those politicians inciting violence against minorities, those politicians that are getting away with corruption, and those politicians that are pushing these destructive policies like the Expropriation Act.
Meanwhile, the Hawks are wasting time and energy investigating a non-case, which has no prospect of succeeding unless the courts are corrupt.
It's just intimidation.
Meanwhile, while that's happening, it's also draining resources, paying for lawyers. But meanwhile, that's happening, there's no criminal charges against Doctors William Kesey for the Digital Vibes case, in which the Hawks proved that he committed crimes and he committed corruption. He still sits in Parliament drawing a $2 million a year salary. All he did was resign as a health minister, still sitting there. There's no investigation into the subversion of the means of justice, the torture of suspects in the Pala Pala case, or of the illegal importation of $580,000 U.S. currency, violating tax laws and currency laws. Nothing into that. All we hear is a bogus case from the former head of Parliament, the Speaker or the responsible Parliament there, who said that he committed no ethics violations. I don't care whether Ramaphosa violated ethics in the Parliament. He broke the law. Why isn't there an investigation in that? What's the outcome of Ace Magashule and the Vreda dairy farm, or the asbestos trial? The list goes on and on. The Hawks should be focused on actual criminals, not harassing innocent South Africans.
Absolutely. Chris, we've reached the end of our conversation. We could go on for hours and hours more on the disaster that we both witnessed there live in full HD. But Chris, to end our conversation is just more a bit of a short, simple question. And that is, as an American, after what we've witnessed the past few months with South Africa and minorities in South Africa being in the spotlight, what are the chief takeaways that South Africans in general need to be taking away from these happenings? What should be, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should we be glad about what's transpired? Should we be sad and frustrated? What is your message to just the average South African? What should they make of the past few months?
First, I would say that South Africans have to be patient. I know that's difficult to ask for because South Africans have been suffering, black, white, and brown, for 30 years of malfeasance, certainly since 2008 malfeasance. So asking for your patience is difficult. But I would say that you should be hopeful that for a couple things. Number one, for the first time in over a century, a global head of state has recognized the Afrikaners as a people. Donald Trump did that with his executive order. That's a very hopeful sign that he recognized you as a people. A very complicated mix of people, but a people nonetheless as a group. I think that's a very helpful thing to keep in mind. Also, Trump's offer refugee status. I think those who are interested should just be patient and do your statement of interest, wait to see what happens. They'll get in touch with you and things will flow from there. I think that all the events unfolded recently are very hopeful for South Africa, but what I am certain of is that the events of the past week and the past several months have proven that the ruling party and the government national unity don't care about black South Africans. They don't care about brown South Africans. They don't care about white South Africans. They care about elites and cadres who are privileged, the wealthy who support them, and those who sit in political office for their own self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement, and craven political power. And that South Africans will continue to suffer unless and until the rest of the world, Europe in particular, takes action, or Donald Trump takes specific action against South Africa. Until then, things aren't going to change. The narrative won't change, and things will only get progressively worse as the infrastructure collapses and the thieves continue to steal. And that's my takeaway.
I think that's a fantastic place to end it. Chris, thank you very much for tuning in. Once again, if for some reason you are out there listening to this and you don't know who this man is who I'm talking to, it's Colonel Chris Wyatt, and you can find his channel link in the description. He does current events analysis, long format interviews, all about not just South Africa, but also happening in the US and elsewhere. And he does hard-hitting, frequent analysis, all you need in regards to an alternative, refreshing voice in an ocean of propaganda, in an outdated system of legacy media. Chris, thank you very much for your time and insights. Maybe later this year, we can have an episode where we look to 2026 in regards to an Africa overview, as we always do on this channel. That episode is just it's just been lost, fallen through the cracks of all the chaos and the whirlwind of the past few months. But once again, I just want to thank you for your time and insights here tonight.
My pleasure, Ernst. All the best.
All right. And then lastly, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you for your comments and your questions and all of your inputs that I could put on screen. I really appreciate it, and it added a lot to the channel as always. If you're new to this channel, you can like and subscribe. These are the types of conversations that I tried to have here, conversations that are relevant not just to South Africa, but the wider Western world as well. And next week, I have a conversation at 7 o'clock Central Africa time, live here on my channel Tuesday next week with Martin van Staden, the researcher behind the Race Laws Index in South Africa, and the man who we can thank for for the fact that we know we have over 140 race laws in this country. Martin actually went and did the work. He went and did the research to come to the conclusion, well, how many race laws are there actually in South Africa? And that's why I interviewed him in my documentary as well. So next week, I'm going to be talking to him about the 140 plus race laws in South Africa, and you can hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So you can be looking forward to that as well. And also, lastly, if you want to support fact-based analysis, you can also become a member of AfriForum. And if you want to support community-based solutions and the fight for minority rights and the rights of South Africans in general, you can also become a member of AfriForum. And there's a link in the description of this video where you can easily become a member. And thank you very much to everyone who told me in the chat that they are already members. That's fantastic. Chris, I'm not going to be keeping you for any longer. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll chat again real soon. Godspeed. Cheers, guys. Have a good one, and God bless.